Ya empezó a grabar. Espera. Ya.
¿Listo?
Y ya.
Good morning. My group is conformed by María Paula Alvarado, Año, Dalin Vargas, and me, Dana Angel. The title of the investigation is Violence and Psychological Effect of Quarantine in Bogota and Medellin. The introduction is about of the pandemic caused by the coronavirus. Principal many factors consequence of quarantine. It can be exemplified in the loss of job, since at the least 20% of the population, loiter jobs, or the lot of home. The monotony and psychology fatigue and routine generate multiple psychological alterations and associated with simple symptoms or also disorders such as deteriorating functionality, such insomnia, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In Colombia, as a result of implications, their behavior, violence behavior, and increase in domestic violence. Well, in the methodology, in the populations, the 76% of the answer could originate in 6 areas of Colombia. And why we decide to propose of Bogota and Medellin? Because Bogota have a 37% of calls and Antioquia 12% of calls. For that very reason, the population that was determined for the application of the instrument in approximately 14 men and women, and the age of 25 and 30 from the city of Bogota and Medellin. The type of research of quantity and descriptive science is responsible for making for description of aggressive and violent behavior. And the instrument is that will be used to find these variables will be surveyed, in which social demographic and situational questions are shown. Also in the relations to their emotions. This in order to obtain as much information as possible, which will allow us to respond to the hypnosis raised. And the question problem is, one of the questions that was asked in the project is, what factors can contribute to aggressive behavior and the home during the pandemic? The process first survey will be carried of the people who can participate and who meet the criteria such as live in Bogota or Medellin, who married or who live in their parents. Then the instrument survey will be a central social networks or internet message. Since communication is faster and easier in addition to fact that instrument is virtual. And third, when the survey results from all the participants, the date and graph will be analyzed by the same server programs.
Okay. Now we're gonna talk about the results. Okay, first of all, we done a socio-demographic questions to know what is the ubication of population. Like the gender, age, city, and marital status. The following question we are asked in order to find out what their situation was during their quarantine, whether they have a job or not. Um, most of okay, the 56.7% answer no. These people hasn't had have the 43.3% answer yes. Additionally, the participant exposed the situation that contribute to the appearance of these emotions and in general the concern about contracting the virus and not being able to work. In relation and evident change, notice his emotions was anxiety and frustration. In relation to the participants, the change they noticed were distancing, irritability, loss of social activity, and each of the participants answered if they were or have ever been a victim of domestic abuse. 87.7% answered no, and the 13.3 answered yes. They provide some of the facts that may influence intrafamily abuse in quarantine, indicating the following factors: economic problems and lack of communication. Furthermore, um, 15, 53.3 do not know the communication. The 46.7% say yes to know them. You found, we found with this question is well found that the only communication channel they know in case of emergency are the police numbers. There were two cases intrafamily violence, one against women and other two against men. In the first case, 63.3 do not feel identified, 26.7 know a person who suffered, and 10% they feel identified. In the second case, 72.3 do not identified, 66.7 they know someone who suffered, and the 10% do not feel identified. Angie,
Okay. In this question, I identify to when their sample correspond to the participants and taking into account the objects of the examen constituted en Ley 257 del 2008. And so the measurement implement to measure social and emotional situation that influence to mode of couples of family through the quarantine decreed in Colombia in the framework of COVID-19. It was observed that the gender-based violence increasing an average of 100 according to figures provided by national entities of stressors that increased the appearance of violence behaviors of confinement, economic concern, and for communication with relationship center of period of deteriorate that both parties identified both by the social rule of remaining in union was a family and gender violence being an use of social impact identified as a crime. We find that willing the profession women self-form a fear including by social or family environment to report where perpetuates due to the obligation of the partners the most remaining in continuous violence. And finally, it is identified the violence will site remains in many of the Colombia homes in is still tubes negates how to solve their problems since it enters family and police dilemmas.
Marie.
Conclusions. As a psychologist affects the appendix, we found in Proyect is an amount of social anxiety, anxiety, sadness, greatly excited at the feeling of tranquility among the people survived it. The second one is the reason presented by the responses, therefore, which they consider that the felt emotions are rarely found the same confidence. The economic factors, some of the responsibility of their jobs, and the other half companions that they were close, they had to continue pay so periods, CVs, among the others. And there's one, the uncertainty of the future. The other one, around 13-14% of the show survived notice as an important change of their relationships with their partner during the quarantine period, mainly due to unnoticed distance in their treatment or by irritability or negative attitude or sexually appetite in the others. The first one, the other one is the respondent consider the characteristics that make of domestic violence are the mainly psychological, psychological, verbal, and sexual abuse. Lack of patience, lack of communications, monetary abuse, and jealousy of the misery. And the 13%, they survived they sourced domestic violence in quarantine. It is important to remember that before the quarantine, they don't have no surveillance. And the sixth one, response considered that the reason of the duration they intro family violence in the quarantines and nearly the confinement, economic difficult as said before, lack employ and jobs and the others. Discussions between couples, irritability, lack of communication, lack of coexistence guidelines, sharing with 100, 100% of the wife, the same person. The other one, 34% of the survivors they know the violence is the case of the main victims of the domestic violence. The most population focused are the police number, 90 homes, 1 to 3 per line. 30% of those survivors the stages their family relationship were negative affected by the quarantine. And the last one, 100% of the same survivors consider of the quarantine of affect the people's behavior in the following cases, by confident effects, by the stress, by changes the identity and sharing with the same percent of the day with the same person.